What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and we're going to do something slightly different today. What we're going to do is we're going to take a small look at the Hori Pokken Tournament Pro Pad. Now, you may be asking, why are we looking at a Wii U accessory? Well, we'll get to that in a second. First off, we're going to find out what the Hori Pokken Tournament Pro Pad actually is. So this is a replica pad of the controller or pad used on the Pokken Tournament arcade machines in Japan. That's right, the Pokken Tournament arcade machines did not use traditional arcade sticks. They actually had these controllers coming out of them. The only difference is that there are 4 less buttons on the Wii U version of this pad. There's a ZL and a ZR, start and select buttons. 4 buttons that had no place on the controller in the arcades, but naturally they're more useful on the Wii U. It's also important to note that while this is made by Hori, this is an officially licensed Nintendo product. Now first off, who are Hori? Well, Hori are a peripheral manufacturer that make extremely high quality peripherals. They make them for Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC, and they make excellent quality peripherals, including arcade sticks, which is probably what they're most known for. They make a bunch of other pads too, not just limited to arcade style ones, but the main thing that Hori are known for are their extremely high quality arcade sticks. So you may be wondering, why are we taking a look at this? This was made for the Wii U. This was made really only to work with Pokken Tournament. Why are we even bothering with this? Well, it's come to my attention that recently the Nintendo Switch has actually received an update that allows this particular controller to work with the Nintendo Switch. Now, it's mainly because Pokken Tournament DX is coming out soon, but the point is, people who have the old controller from their Wii U days, or people who are looking to get into the actual Pokken Tournament DX relatively seriously on the Nintendo Switch, they're not going to want to use the terrible Joy-Cons. They may not even want to use the Pro Controller, which has kind of a dodgy history with its D-pad. Originally, I was very happy with the D-pad, but as time went on and I used it more and more, I became more frustrated and saw many of the glaring issues with it. And of course, because this controller was originally launched on the Wii U, naturally no one wanted to use the absolutely terrible Wii U gamepad, and of course the Wii U Pro Controller was gold dust. But that still doesn't really explain why I bought this and why we're looking at this. Well, I have been playing a lot of Ultra Street Fighter 2 on Nintendo Switch. I've made the decision that I'm going to play it pretty seriously. Doubt I'll ever play it enough to become pro level, especially because I live in Ireland and there's practically no competitive fighting game scene here. But the point is, I want to get very good at it. Now, I've always been pretty good at Street Fighter, but I want to get as good as I can. And Hori are actually releasing one of their arcade sticks, one of their more popular ones, for the Nintendo Switch. However, unfortunately, that particular arcade stick for Nintendo Switch doesn't officially release until July 31st. Yes, I have one ordered already, but it will take 2 or 3 days to actually get here post-launch. So chances are I'm going to have it in around maybe 2nd, 3rd or 4th of August. So what was I going to do up until then? You know, what was I going to do from late June to the start of August? Because I was getting more and more frustrated as I was playing with the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller, because I was running into the D-pad issues more and more and more. And as you progress up in your skill ranks, you're getting up against players who are better at the game, players who potentially have some sort of competitive history or just a massive amount more experience than me. Naturally, you need the advantage and you need every little bit you can get. And when a D-pad isn't living up to its actual use, you start to run into problems, you start getting bodied, and suddenly you're tumbling down the PP ranks. So before we go any further in this video, it's important to note that every single thing you're seeing in this video is captured from my Nintendo Switch using this controller. Now, some of it may be questionable, but we'll cover what you'll wonder why I'm putting some of that in there, but it will all make sense further on down the line. So what do I think of the controller? Well, first off, we have to look at it real quick. So as the controller, you can see it's a standard style controller, roughly the usual style shape with a little bit of a twist, and it has 4 face buttons as well as 4 central buttons. So it's got your standard A, B, X and Y face buttons. You have ZL, ZR, start and select in the center, a D-pad on your left, and an L and R shoulder buttons. Now the thing to note is that yes, it does not have analog sticks. So this is naturally only going to be compatible with certain games, more specifically Pokken Tournament, and in my case, Ultra Street Fighter 2, because I found out that it actually would work with that game. When I had first found out the Switch had got the update to allow it to work, I thought it was only going to be for Pokken Tournament DX. Thankfully, that's not the case. So I looked into it a little bit more after I heard about the update, and it turns out that this is supposedly a pretty good controller. And many people were thinking, okay, there's no arcade stick yet. The Pro Controller isn't a very good option for D-pad use for Ultra Street Fighter 2, but apparently this was pretty good, so I decided it would behoove me to actually pick one of these up and give it a try. Now these controllers are fairly cheap, which is a nice bonus as well, and there's still a large abundance of them because, well, Pokken Tournament didn't sell exceptionally well, and of course lots of these controllers are just going to be left over. So this controller cost me £16.25. In real world money, that's €18.35, which is probably about the same in dollars, give or take a very, very minute amount. So to be honest, overall, if the controller was dirt, I wasn't really too put out. Oh no, I'm down €20 if it's bad, what's the problem there? I didn't really think too much of it at the time. So one thing to note as well is that when we look at the top of the controller, the L and R buttons, they're not full-on triggers, but they're not standard little shoulder buttons. I find them kind of somewhere halfway between standard PS2 style shoulder buttons and somewhere between them and the L2 and R2 semi-triggers of the PlayStation 3, which we all know had horrible shoulder button, at least horrible L2 and R2 buttons. So I find that they're kind of somewhere in there because depending on the size of your hands, if you kind of grip them to the point where your fingers are at the very edge, you can still press down and get a nice good response. Or if you've got smaller hands or play with your fingers at the forefront of the buttons, you can still easily press them and get the same kind of response. As no doubt you've already noticed, and as is expected from a fighting game controller, this controller is fully USB, wired only. There's no wireless in this controller, but if you're playing a fighting game, you're going to want a wired controller, so you don't drop inputs and there's very minimal lag. Or should I say, it eliminates the very minimal lag from wireless and Bluetooth controllers. Because a wired connection, be it in anything you do, be it internet, HDMI, video, audio, or even just controller inputs, wired is always better. And thankfully it's not a repeat of the NES Classic or the NES Mini. The controller length is roughly 3 meters, which is about 10 feet, give or take a couple of inches here or there. Which is a good controller length if you ask me, because I know it's about where my Switch is versus where I sit when I'm playing it. I mean, it's roughly about maybe 2 meters from where I sit to my Switch, and I still have a good bit of slack left over. So when the odd chance I tug it a small bit, or maybe in if I get a bout of rage because someone's abusing Akuma online or something along those lines, maybe if I swing my hand a little bit, I'm not gonna smash the controller, but if I just swing it in my arms and throw them up in the air or something, the controller isn't going to just pull it down because it's got a good actual controller length, which is always very nice. Now we'll quickly take a look at something that I had a little bit of a concern about at first, but went away very, very quickly. So when I took this out of its packaging, out of the box that it came in, and I picked up the controller, instantly I was thinking, oh no, this feels really light. Is this just going to be a cheap, flimsy piece of crap? Because like I said, Hori are known for quality products, but you do pay a premium to get those products. And versus other Hori controllers, this was relatively cheap. So it had me worried instantly. Now, thankfully, this was not the case. Yes, it does feel a little bit light, but you can tell it's still a good quality, sturdy construction. Now you may be wondering, it's like, wait a minute, how can something that feels light be sturdy and good quality? Well, you're probably not familiar with Hori products, basically, is the way I can put it in simple terms, is that when you pick up this controller, if you squeeze it, if you try to twist it, if you press anywhere on the controller, it feels sturdy. There's no loose panels, there's no creaking, there's no squeezing, there's no give. It's really, really well suited, which also ties into what I'm about to say right now, is that the controller at first feels a little big, it feels a little chunky. I have probably slightly bigger than medium-sized hands. I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, my hands are probably like a size 8 or something like that, in around there. Hands are weird like that. But I have, slightly bigger hands than average, I'd say. And when I picked up this controller, the grips where you put your palms and wrap your fingers around, it made me think, wow, this feels really big and chunky. Now, that kind of got me thrown aback as well, for the simple reason is if you can't get a good grip on your controller, or you're actively thinking about it the entire time when you're playing it because it doesn't feel natural, you can't get into it, and that's something you have to work around, and it's going to take away from your game overall. Luckily, that feeling, if I'll call it that, went away within minutes, and I completely forgot that it originally felt too big the instant I had put it in my hands. Now, the reason why I think, looking back on it, why I think that it felt possibly too big was I've put in a serious amount of time with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. And I haven't really played too many other games lately that used controllers outside of the Switch, with the exception being of Valkyria Chronicles on my PC, in which I use the Xbox One Elite controller. But the point is, the majority of controller use that I've used in the past maybe 2 months has been a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which has slightly smaller hand grips. So I think it was just a comparison thing, because this thing that I'm used to picking up to play all my games lately, and then I'm picking something up for essentially for the first time, and it's like, whoa, this feels different, this feels slightly bigger, why is this? It's just a comparative thing. After literally 2 minutes, if even it took that long, I had already forgotten about it and moved on and just comfortably started playing games. So I've danced around the topic for over 10 minutes now, yes, specifically for dancing around that particular topic, it's the main question that everyone is going to want to ask when it comes to this controller. What is the D-pad like? And I am happy to report the D-pad on this controller is absolutely fantastic. And the best way I can illustrate that is by using all this Street Fighter 2 footage. You're going to see me pull off every single move that I try without fail every single time. The only exception is a move that I struggle to pull off sometimes as it is, which is Chun-Li's super. But other than that, everything she can do, I can pull off perfect 100% rate with this controller. Unfortunately, that was not the case with the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which was 4 times the price of this. But the point is, with this Hori Pokken Pro pad, I didn't have a single problem with any of the inputs. It feels good when you're charging, when you're swiftly moving forward, when you're swiftly going from, down left to up, whatever you're doing, back forward, down left to up, whatever it is, it's smooth, it's responsive, and you have no problems. And the key thing is that it feels good when you do it. When you press any direction on the D-pad, you can feel it. It's not too harsh, it's not too soft and spongy or loose. Another bonus as well is that when you press any of the 4 face buttons or the L and R shoulder buttons, they give a nice hearty click. Nice responsive click. Not the hollow kind of press click, but the actual good responsive click, just the kind you want when you're pressing a button during a competitive fighting game. And the cool thing is that because of the nature of the controller, the lack of an analog stick, a good D-pad it has, as well as the actual shoulder buttons and face buttons, it doubles up really well as a great retro controller for me. When you look at every game on my Nintendo Switch at the moment, I can use this controller to properly play 7 of the 9 games on my Nintendo Switch, 2 of which I can't play, being Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, but I've got a Pro controller for that. So for me personally, in the style of games I play and the way I play, this works really well. I think it's going to keep me going for a good amount of time, especially even after the Hori Real Arcade Pro Hayabusa 5 comes out for Nintendo Switch. Sure, that will become my main, I would say controller, but my main arcade stick for Ultra Street Fighter, but I think I'll still probably use this for all my other retro games, chances are, because that way I don't have to worry about the controller, the Pro controller, the battery, charging it up, all that. I can just literally plug this in, or even leave it plugged in, and just go from there. It also doubles up as a nice extra good controller for if I'm going to play multiplayer with someone and I don't want to have to make them use the Joy-Cons. So you're probably wondering by now, it's like, oh, this all sounds really good. Q, do you recommend this for me? Well, that's a big question. Now, this controller, as I mentioned, is relatively cheap and it's pretty widely available because of tons of leftover stock from the Pokken and Wii U days when no one bought either of those. Hell, you could say no one bought all three of them because no one bought the controllers, because no one was playing Pokken, because no one would had Wii U's. And you could be thinking, hell, I play a lot of retro games, I play a lot of, say, Neo Geo games and all, or even if I just want to play Ultra Street Fighter 2, this could be a good controller for me. Yes and no. While yes, it is a great and reasonably priced controller, the problem is timing at the moment. As I mentioned, this controller set me back €18.50 in euro, which is, it's not a large amount of money. But Hori themselves have an officially licensed Pro substitute coming soon for Nintendo Switch. Officially licensed, also made by Hori, releasing on July 31st. And this is something that is almost a fully fledged replacement for your Nintendo Switch Pro controller. I say almost because 1, it is a wired controller, it is not wireless. 2, it doesn't have all the complete functionality of a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. In the case of your accelerometers, I can never pronounce that word correctly, or your gyroscopes. And of course your NFC amiibo reader. But the big thing to note, there's actually 2 big things to note, is that in comparison to their Pokken pad, this controller features the same layout of the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, in which case it means, yes, dual analog sticks. So this can be used with basically every game versus stuff that can only be played without an analog stick. So that's something to consider, as well as especially if you're looking at controllers like this, D-pads are usually a concern. This Nintendo Switch Extra Hori Pro replacement, we'll call it, actually has the ability to change between an actual proper D-pad and a standard style 4-button Joy-Con-esque D-pad. Now you may be thinking, okay, that's all well and good, but this controller, this Pro Switch controller replacement, actually launches in a couple of weeks. As I mentioned, it launches on July 31st, and the big thing about it is the price. This controller is going to launch for £27, which is going to be €30.50. So when you take that into consideration, it's only an extra €12 versus the Hori Pro Pokken pad, we'll call it, and you're getting a fully fledged Nintendo Switch controller that can be used as a second controller or as a Nintendo Switch Pro controller replacement, because it has your dual analog sticks. So that is something that's very key and important to note when making a decision if one of these controllers is for you. Now, we don't know the quality of the D-pad, the quality of the controller in general for the upcoming Switch version of the pad, but it is from Hori, it's officially licensed by Nintendo as well. Chances are it's going to be some excellent quality piece of hardware. So I feel like I've taken a look at every possible aspect and facet of the controller, what it could be used for, what it can't be used for, the price of it, the potential uses, what you may actually get out of it, and the comparison with an upcoming controller, basically to give you a good idea if this controller is right for you or if this controller is wrong for you. So let me know, are you interested in this kind of controller? Would you use it for fighting games, for retro stuff, or would you wait and pay a little bit extra and get that fully fledged second controller replacement essentially from Hori when it launches at the end of the month? Wow, this video is nearly 20 minutes long. I suck at doing these, I won't call them reviews, but I suck at looking at products. That's the best way of describing it. I hope this has been informative for you if you are considering an alternative or considering something like this. Let me know in the comments section below if you have any questions or if I've even helped or not helped you in this way. Suggest some feedback, whatever. Leave all that in the comments section below, as well as if you plan on picking up either of these controllers, also let me know. Actually, we'll call it 3 controllers because I'm curious to see if anyone is getting the Real Arcade Pro as well. So let me know all that in the comments section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.